Hello everybody, welcome back to the Looney Bin and welcome to my shipping and videos where I make essentially videos talking about the shipping communities from many different fandoms, specifically from anime, manga, video games, and so on. And the reason why I make these videos is because I like talking about shipping, especially in fandoms that I had either a small investment or a big investment in the shipping community. And today's video, we're going to be going into a shipping community and talking about a shipping community and exactly how that shipping community was for a series that I watched a long time ago when I was a wee little lad. A series that kind of, depending on who you are, competed against Pokemon for best Japanese children media during the 90s, right? And today's video, shipping in video, is going to be about Digimon Adventure, specifically Season 1 and Season 2. Now, why those specifically? Well, to be fair, Season 1 and Season 2 is really the only Digimon season I actually cared about. I did watch Season 4, but Season 3 would never really hit me, or I never really vibed with Season 3, but specifically Season 1 and Season 2 because I think that's where a lot of more of the shipping community was more invested in. And it's to say the shipping community in Digimon Season 1 and Season 2, Digimon Adventures, was pretty chaotic, pretty much it was a war because of many different reasons, specifically of two ships, but there was a lot more going on within the shipping community, specifically with the series that let's just say it gets a little confusing, but it should be well noted that a lot of the shipping wars that occurred within the Digimon adventure seasons kind of boiled down to some poor miscommunication and poor localization of the series for Western audiences. And that's really where like a lot of the shipping community kind of like butted heads on. Now, before I go into more about the shipping community, I want to give you a heads up and let you know, like during my time shipping in Digimon Adventures 1 and 2, what ship did I enjoy? Right? What ship did I ship while watching Digimon? And this just gives you at least some sort of context behind how I view the shipping community, just to give you some context, right? Whether or not you like my side of things, or if you believe that I'm being biased, that is up to you. That is perfectly acceptable, and I understand why you may think that where I come from and how I see the shipping community within Digimon comes from like a biased perspective. But I just want to let you know, just to at least give you a heads up, just in case you were wondering exactly who I shipped at the end of the day. Now, for me, when Digimon Season 1 and Season 2 aired, when I was a kid, I was more of a Tai and Sora shipper. I believe that Tai and Sora had a really good friendship. They started off as childhood friends. They knew each other. They played soccer with each other. And I thought that they had a really strong bond that slowly built up throughout the season, right? And I fully believe that. And really, at the time, I really saw no other ship that would fit Sora and Tai, to get with anyone else. And then Season 2's epilogue came out, and I was confused. I was dumbfounded. It felt like I was led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived, because everything I thought about, everything that I knew, felt like it was just it was just thrown out the window, because I don't know how it could have happened that a relationship between Matt and Sora occurred when you don't really necessarily see it in the series, right? At least through my perspective. And I was just like, what? How? Huh? What happened? Right? And I'm sure a lot of Sora Tai shippers were also left confused and befuddled by exactly what happened with the epilogue after Season 2. And we're going to go over exactly why that occurred But for the most part, for me, I mostly ship Sora and Tai. There were other ships of Digimon that other people shipped, such as Mimi and Easy. There was also, of course, the other popular ship of Kairi and TK. And a lot of people really enjoyed those ships. When TK and Kairi didn't end up together, it was also kind of weird. And it just felt like TK and Kairi had that bond that could definitely had led them to some sort of romantic relationship at some point when they got older. They even teased it through some songs, as well as in a particular scene. I forgot if it was in a movie or in the Digimon Tri series, where they tease each other about having a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and stuff like that. They kept teasing each other, and it really felt like they would be a thing, but it never became anything. Not even in the epilogue of season 2. Right? Even in Digimon Tri, it never really became anything. So it was very confusing. That's essentially where I fall in the shipping community in Digimon. So now let's talk about the shipping community in general. The shipping community in general in Digimon Adventure Season 1 and 2, a lot of it came down to exactly who Sora would end up with, as well as the relationship and bond between TK and Kairi. That's where most of the conflict, a lot of the wars tended to follow between, those ships. And not necessarily much as TK and Kairi, because TK and Kairi was universally loved by, I would assume, most of the shipping community, because there was nothing really that went against it. In season 2, you had that more of that shipping war because you had Davis, who had a crush on Kairi. And, that's where more of it was amplified. Season 1, not so much. In Season 2, yes. But for the most part, during Season 1, it was a highly debated topic of who would Sora end up with. Would it be Tai or would it be Matt? And for the most part, a lot of people were, there were Matt and Sora shippers, but for the most part, at the time when Season 1 was airing, a lot of people just did not view that ship as a possibility. There was a strong small following, but a lot of people, I think, especially in the Western community, saw Sora and Tai as the main ship. Then Season 2 hit, and the epilogue just threw everything out the window, because apparently Matt and Sora became canon at the end. They had kids, and no one at the time understood why. No, it just came out of left field. And it, raised the spirits of Matt and Sora shippers to the point where now, then became a huge war between each other, because while Matt and Sora did become the canon ship with the epilogue, Sora and Tai shippers were extremely pissed and tried to fight it at every single angle they could, because it just didn't make sense. They criticized the writing. They said the writing was just piss poor, because nothing in the seasons actually showcased anything between Matt and Sora. It was more off screen, and that kind of pissed people off. You kind of see more of Matt and Sora kind of within Season 2 a little bit, but it was just a little bit. It wasn't something that it really was very focal. It was a very large focal point in the series. So that's why a lot of people were just utterly confused about why, right? How did that become canon? And that's where a lot of shipping debates essentially ended up. Why did this happen? Why did Matt and Sora end up together instead of Tai and Sora? Well, it really boiled down to a very misleading localization by a wonderful company that many people enjoy and love during the olden days. Unless you were a One Piece fan back then you really hated this company. A company called 4Kids. Hi everyone. You're probably looking at either a blank screen or a Digimon wallpaper or something like that. I wanted to re-uploaded this video simply just because I made a mistake, and that mistake was that I said that 4Kids was the company that localized Digimon, when in fact it was not 4Kids. It was Saban. I knew it was Saban, but for some reason my mind always went back to 4Kids. And to be fair, 4Kids did have some controversial localizations alongside Saban, so both companies had some very interesting localizations, but it was not 4Kids that did the localization before Digimon, it was Saban, so they are mostly the company that did really mislead a lot of shippers for who are Sora Tai shippers, and created this narrative of Sora Tai having these shipping moments. So I just wanted to make that clear, so that's why we uploaded the video. The reason why so many people actually saw Sora Tai as something that was progressing throughout the season was because of the localization, for the most part. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that 4Kids is entirely to blame for misleading Sora and Tai shippers, because there are moments within the Japanese dub that kind of also hint at it, but for the most part, the 4Kids dub is the leading cause of so many misled perception of why Sora and Tai was somewhat a thing that so many people shipped, right? Because they took liberties in a lot of the translations. Like, it was really shocking to hear and see people look at the differences between the English dub and the Japanese dub, and it was just fascinating to see that a lot of the stuff that they gave Sora's lines that seemed like endearing and maybe somewhat romantic, from Sora to Tai, especially in the Digimon movie, and even some parts of the series, it would lead you to believe that Sora and Tai were going to grow closer at an emotional length to eventually becoming canon. But when it didn't, it was mostly because of the bad localization. For some strange reason, 4Kids decided that they wanted to push Sora and Tai as a narrative, right? As some sort of plot point at a romantic level. Now, this could have been because they didn't expect, the creators of Digimon to essentially end with an epilogue where they showcase who ended up with who, right? But it was very strange to see. It's one of the rare occurrences where the localization hindered and really misled a lot of shippers. Now, you could say that you were misled, that you believe that everything that they localized and even the Japanese dub really fits, Sora and Tai more, and it was just the writers doing a piss poor job. I'm not here to argue about if that is true or not, but that's where most of that, misleading came from. And that's where a lot of the shipping community wars came from. It ignited that fuel, ignited that fire that these shipping communities were eventually debating against each other arguing with each other, right? And even TK and Kyrie never ended up together. From my knowledge, they only viewed each other as friends, so that's why it was just what is going on here? This is a great example of how localization could really ruin a shipping community to the point where, it became just so out of place. It just honestly made no sense. Now, again, like I said, I'm not here to argue and debate with you about whether or not Sora and Tai should have become canon, that the writing was piss poor, Matt and Sora's relationship was all off screen. The point is that that's how the shipping communities essentially was. It was really led by a bad localization that kind of misled them into believing in something that never really was. Even in the Japanese dub, there might have been some hints that you could have used to provide yourself for that, but for the most part, no, there really wasn't that much. Granted, maybe romance wasn't a big plot point, in Digimon Season 1 and 2, and the creators did not want to, really do romance as a big thing, until eventually when they did a sequel to Season 1 and Season 2, later down the road for, the anniversary, and you had the whole Digimon special episodes 1 through 6 while they were in high school, right? And then it showed more of, Matt and Sora, getting closer together in a relationship, and so on. So it really baffled people. And the shipping community, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the shipping community, unless you're a Matt and Sora, but then you're yippee, you're happy. But I feel bad for them because we shouldn't be misled by a localization or bad translation or something like that. We shouldn't be misled, right? And we should have, the opportunity to experience, a series based on how they really wanted it to be, And having bad localization just hurts, right? And you see that not as often anymore, right? But you still see that in certain series. A great example of a current series or a current franchise that does it is Final Fantasy VII. There are some really bad English localization, English translation with the remake project. I mean, I've been discussing this. I've been discussing with other Final Fantasy VII fans that there is some issues with the translation and localization of Final Fantasy VII. It was even with the OG, but it's much more rare nowadays because a lot more people are now noticing where like the misconceptions are between the English and Japanese because we're just so much more linked on the internet. But back then, it was just like the only evidence we had was the localization, right? We didn't have like people from Japan to ask if this was the case, if this was happening, this was the case, if this was happening. But at the time, the shipping communities only had the localization, so it was just like it was so mind-boggling when it didn't go the way some shippers believed it to be, and it was all because of just some poor localization from 4Kids. 4Kids has been known to do a lot of that kind of stuff. Even in series that people love, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, even the early Pokemon, there was a lot of localization issues in those series, such as Brock saying onigiri are jelly-filled donuts. Like, I get it, you're trying to localize something that, a type of food that probably most American children will not even know what it is, but maybe they might get interested in it, you know? Who knows? Just say it was a rice ball. I'm sure kids know what rice is. Like, you know, it was so baffling. But at the end of the day, the shipping community was a minefield of a war that was partly to blame by a localization that did not do it any justice. Despite the fact that there were some funny ass moments with some of the localization, like Greymon saying "yo," you know, but like it really hindered the shipping community a lot, and it just hurt the shipping community because it just really, we wanted to be as legitimately close to the original source as possible, and 4Kids did not give us that when Digimon Season 1 and 2 aired back in the 90s. So let me know what you think. Who did you ship in Digimon? Let me know how you felt about the whole thing, about localization and stuff like that. And even if you disagree with me about the localization being put to blame and that you think it's just a piss poor writing, that's also fine too. All I ask is just to be, you know, respectable in the comments. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you guys next time.